They said the rope would fit her neck by morning, but the dog knew different. The sun came down hard on Salvation Bend that August, the kind of heat that made the earth crack open like old lips whispering secrets no one wanted to hear. Dust rode the wind in sheets, covering everything: the false front buildings, the water troughs, the faces of men who'd stopped asking questions years ago. Clara Hewitt stood in the town square with her hands bound behind her back, sweat tracking lines through the dust on her cheeks. 6 months heavy with child, her belly pressed against the coarse cotton of her dress, and still they'd tied her wrists so tight the rope had already drawn blood. It ran warm and slow down her forearms, pooling in the creases of her elbows. "Witch!" someone called from the crowd. The word hung there, sharp as a blade. She didn't look up. Couldn't afford to. Eye contact was confession in a town like this, where fear wore a badge, and suspicion passed for law. Her bare feet, they'd taken her boots that morning, said a witch shouldn't touch good leather burned against the sun-baked boards of the platform they'd built special. The town had decided 3 days prior, after the Garrity baby died of fever and old Samuel's well went dry in the same week. Someone had to answer for God's cruelty, and Clara, unmarried, pregnant, and new to town, she'd do just fine. Sheriff Cutler stood beside her, thick-necked and righteous. "You confess willingly. We make it quick," he said, voice low. "You fight it." He let the rest hang unfinished. Clara said nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like begging. That's when she heard it, a sound like gravel under a wagon wheel, growling. The crowd parted, and through the gap came a dog. It was a sorry creature, all ribs and mange, one ear torn half off and healed badly. Its coat wore the color of roads and drought and hard living. Yellow eyes, though, sharp and clear as creek water. Those eyes found Clara and held. The dog limped straight through the crowd, dragging its back left leg, and it didn't stop until it reached the platform. Then it sat, there at the base of the steps, watching her with an intensity that felt almost human. "Get that animal out of here," Cutler barked. 2 men moved forward, but the dog's growl deepened, showing teeth. The men hesitated. The baby kicked hard inside Clara. She closed her eyes and felt the sun on her face, felt the rope cutting into her wrists, felt the presence of that broken dog like a prayer she hadn't known how to speak. "Feed the witch tonight," Cutler announced. "We hang her at first light." They walked Clara toward the jail, and the dog followed. It followed her all the way across the square, limping and determined, ignoring rocks thrown by children. It followed her right up to the jail door, then sat 15 feet away, watching. Inside the cell, Clara sank onto the wooden bench. Her wrists bled freely, ribbons of red tracking down to her fingertips. She pressed them against her belly and let herself cry. Outside, the dog began to howl. Not mad howling, but something else. Something that sounded almost like singing. And somewhere far out on the edge of town, a rider heard that howling and turned his horse toward Salvation Bend. The stranger rode in with dust on his shoulders and a dead man's name on his lips. James Corrigan hadn't meant to stop in Salvation Bend. He'd been riding 3 days straight, running from nothing and toward less, the way men do when the war's been over for years but still lives in their bones. His horse was tired, his canteen near empty, and the howling, that God-forsaken howling, it pulled at something in his chest he thought he'd buried alongside his wife and the farm they'd tried to build. He came in slow, the way careful men do in strange towns. The main street was empty save for lamplight, spilling from the saloon and the peculiar sight of a starved dog sitting vigil outside the jailhouse, howling up at the barred window like it was singing hymns. James dismounted, tied his horse, and the howling stopped. The dog's yellow eyes fixed on him, measuring. It limped 3 steps forward, 3 steps back. An invitation or a warning, James couldn't tell which. "That animal's been at it for 2 hours," a voice said. James turned. An old man sat on the saloon steps, whittling something that might become a whistle or might stay forever shapeless. His hands were steady despite his years. "What's it want?" James asked. "Same thing we all want, I reckon. Mercy." The old man spat into the dust. "Won't find none here, though. We're hanging a witch come morning." James felt something cold settle in his gut. A witch. Pregnant one, too. Clara Hewitt. Came to town 2 months back. Wouldn't say where from or who got her with child. Then babies started dying and wells went dry, and folks needed someone to blame. The old man's knife paused. "I voted against it, for what that's worth, which ain't much." She confess? Didn't need to. Fear confesses for people nowadays. James looked back at the dog, still watching him with those clear yellow eyes. Something about the creature's loyalty, its stubborn presence, reminded him of things he'd rather forget. His wife Sarah had loved strays, brought home every broken thing she found. Said God lived in the forgotten places, in the things people threw away. "I knew a Clara Hewitt once," James said quietly. "Long time ago." The old man's hands went still. "That's so. My wife's sister. Married a man named Hewitt, moved east after the wedding. Haven't heard from her in 6 years." He paused. "She'd be about the right age now." "This one's got green eyes," the old man said, "and a scar here." He touched his left temple. "Shaped like a crescent moon." James closed his eyes. Sarah's sister, little Clara, who'd chased fireflies and braided wildflowers and deserved better than what this world gave women who dared to exist without permission. "Where's the sheriff?" His voice had gone flat, the way it used to before battles. "Home, probably, sleeping easy." The old man stood, bones creaking. "You thinking of doing something stupid, son? Thinking of doing something right? Ain't always the same thing." James walked to the jailhouse. The dog rose and moved aside, granting passage. Inside, a deputy slept in a chair, bottle beside him. James took the keys from the wall hook without waking him. Some men sleep through revolutions, and opened the cell door. Clara sat up slowly, swollen belly making the movement awkward. In the lamplight, he saw Sarah's eyes looking back at him. Same green, same depth, same stubborn hope even when hope was foolish. "James?" Her voice cracked. "James Corrigan?" "Hey there, little sister." She started to cry, and he crossed the cell in 2 steps, wrapping his arms around her as carefully as holding something already broken. She smelled like fear and blood and the particular desperation of women the world's decided to discard. "Sarah?" she whispered against his chest. 3 years gone. Fever." The words still hurt. "I'm sorry." She pulled back, looking at his face. "You came. Dog told me too." Outside, the dog had stopped howling. It sat quiet now, waiting. James cut the rope still hanging loose around Clara's wrists, saw the raw meat of her flesh beneath. He tore strips from his shirt, bound her wounds with hands that remembered field medicine and battlefield mercy. "Can you ride?" he asked. "I can do what needs doing. That's the Hewitt way." He helped her stand. "We go quiet. Go now. I've got a ranch 3 days north over the territory line. You'll be safe there. They'll come after you. Let them." They moved through the jail, past the sleeping deputy, into the night air that tasted like freedom and consequence. The dog fell in beside Clara, limping, but determined. As they reached James's horse, a child's voice cut through the darkness. "Mama, the witch is escaping." Lamplight bloomed in windows. The town was waking. "Ride," James said, lifting Clara into the saddle despite her weight. "Ride hard and don't look back." But Clara looked at the dog, still sitting there, and she said, "Not without him." Blood leaves a trail even in darkness, but so does loyalty. They rode hard through sagebrush and stone, Clara clinging to the saddle horn while James ran alongside, one hand on the horse's neck, the other gripping his rifle. The dog kept pace despite its ruined leg, tongue lolling, eyes fixed forward like it could see salvation in the dark. Behind them, torches bloomed like angry stars. Voices carried on the night wind Sheriff Cutler's bellow rising above the rest, organizing the hunt with the efficiency of a man who'd chased fugitives before. The sound of hoofbeats multiplied, a thunder that promised violence. "They're gaining," Clara gasped, her belly pressed hard against the horse's withers. Every jolt sent pain through her spine, and she could feel wetness between her legs, blood or water. She couldn't tell, didn't want to know. James looked back once, counting torches. 8 riders, maybe 10. Too many for a tired man and a pregnant woman to outrun on a single horse. He made a decision that felt both inevitable and impossible. "There's a box canyon half a mile north," he said, breathing hard. "We make our stand there." "Stand?" Clara's voice pitched high. "James, I can't." "You can. You will." He met her eyes. "Sarah made me promise something before she died. Made me swear if anything happened to you, I'd choose your life over mine. I keep my promises." The canyon opened before them like a mouth, walls rising steep on 3 sides, only one way in or out. James led the horse deep into its throat, where shadows pooled thick and the walls wept water from some underground spring. He helped Clara down, and she collapsed against the stone, both hands on her belly. The dog circled once, then lay down beside her, its body heat a small comfort. James checked his rifle. 6 bullets. He'd killed more men with less, back when killing was duty and duty was a word that meant something. He found a position behind a fallen boulder, 20 feet from where Clara huddled, and he waited. The torches came like fireflies, bobbing through the darkness. They stopped at the canyon mouth and Cutler's voice echoed off stone. "Corrigan, we know you're in there. Send out the witch. You can ride free." "No one wants trouble with you." "Trouble's already here," James called back. "You made it when you condemned an innocent woman." "Innocent?" Cutler laughed, and others joined him. "She cursed this town. 3 children dead, 2 wells poisoned. Children die of fever, wells go dry. That's called living, not witchcraft." A different voice now, high and reedy. "My baby died screaming. Someone's got to pay." James understood then what he was facing. Not law, not even injustice, just pain looking for a target, grief demanding a price. You couldn't reason with that kind of hurt. It had to burn itself out or consume everything in its path. "I'm coming out," Clara said suddenly. "The hell you are. They want me, not you. Your sister wouldn't want. My sister would want her niece or nephew to live." James didn't turn around. "That baby's got Sarah's blood. I won't let them hang it before it draws breath." A long silence from the canyon mouth. Then Cutler, "We're coming in. Last chance." The first rider entered the canyon at a walk, torch held high. James shot the torch, not the man a warning. The torch fell, hissing in the damp sand, and the rider retreated fast. "Next one, I aim lower," James shouted. For a moment, nothing. Then chaos. 3 riders charged in together, and James fired twice, dropping horses, not men, creating a screaming barrier of fallen animals and thrown riders. The gun smoke burned his throat, and his ears rang with the reports. Behind him, Clara moaned low and steady, a sound that made James's blood run cold. He risked a glance back and saw her on her hands and knees, the dog pressed against her side, her face twisted in pain. "Not now," he whispered. "Please, God, not now." But babies come when they come, indifferent to circumstance or convenience. Another charge. James fired his last bullets, heard screams, saw shadows retreating. Then the click of an empty chamber, loud as damnation. He drew his knife, 6 inches of steel that had opened throats in a war that was supposed to end all this, and he stood up from behind the boulder. "All right," he called out. Come finish it. That's when the dog started barking. Not the howling from before, but sharp, urgent barks that echoed off the canyon walls and seemed to multiply, sounding like a whole pack instead of one broken animal. And in the confusion of sound and shadow, something moved at the canyon mouth. A figure on horseback, then another, not the posse, but others. James couldn't make out faces in the darkness, but he heard a woman's voice, clear and commanding. "Cutler, you son of a bitch. Stand down." Sometimes salvation comes not from the righteous, but from the silent who've seen enough. The woman who rode into the canyon mouth sat tall despite her years, spine straight as a rifle barrel. Her hair hung in a long silver braid, and her face held the kind of lines that come from smiling and from suffering in equal measure. Behind her rode 6 others, old men mostly, and 2 younger women, all carrying lanterns instead of torches. "Esther Boone," Cutler said, and James heard genuine surprise in his voice. "This ain't your concern. Everything in this town's my concern. I birthed most of you, buried your parents, and I'll be damned if I watch you murder a pregnant girl, based on fear and stupidity." Esther dismounted with surprising grace, handing her reins to one of the men behind her. She walked straight past Cutler, into the canyon, unarmed and unafraid. James lowered his knife but didn't sheath it. Esther reached Clara, who was panting now, her dress dark with fluid. The dog watched the old woman approach but didn't growl, as if it recognized something trustworthy in her weathered face. "How far apart?" Esther asked, kneeling beside Clara with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Don't. No," Clara gasped. "Minutes. Maybe. Then we've got no time for this foolishness." Esther stood and turned to face the posse. Her voice carried like thunder despite her size. "This girl's giving birth. Right here. Right now. Any man who tries to interfere will answer to me, and I promise you won't like what that means." "She's condemned," Cutler said, but his voice had lost its certainty. You voted out of fear. I'm calling a revote." Esther gestured to the people behind her. "Samuel here, his well came back yesterday. Found out it wasn't dry, just clogged with a dead coyote. Margaret's baby died of scarlet fever. Doc Patterson confirmed it this morning. Same fever that's been going through 3 counties. Ain't witchcraft, just sickness and bad luck." Murmurs rippled through the posse. James watched faces change in the lamplight, certainty cracking like old leather. "The Hewitt girl never cursed nobody," Esther continued. "She came here running from a husband who beat her, looking for somewhere safe to birth her child. I knew it. Didn't speak up because I'm old and tired and I thought you all had more sense than this." She spat into the dust. "I was wrong about that last part." A young man in the posse spoke up, voice shaking. "But we already built the scaffold. We told everyone. Then tear it down and tell them different," Esther snapped. "Or admit you're more afraid of looking foolish than of committing murder." Behind James, Clara screamed a sound that bypassed thought and went straight to the spine, the ancient cry of women in labor that predated language itself. The dog pressed closer to her, whining. Esther moved fast, barking orders. "Mary, Sarah, get over here. We need clean cloth, water, and someone with steady hands." She looked at James. "You her kin? Brother-in-law. Good enough. Hold her shoulders, keep her breathing steady." To the posse, "Rest of you, get back to town. Cutler, you especially. I don't want your shame witnessing this blessing." For a long moment no one moved. Then one of the older men in the posse turned his horse around. Then another. Shame is contagious too, James thought, watching them peel away one by one. Cutler sat his horse, jaw working. "This ain't over, Esther." "Yes, it is. Go home to your wife, pray for forgiveness, and hope God's got a shorter memory than I do." The sheriff left last, torch guttering, and the canyon, fell into a different kind of darkness, one lit by lanterns instead of hate, filled with women's voices speaking soft instructions instead of condemnation. James held Clara's shoulders while Esther worked between her legs with hands that had caught hundreds of babies and lost count years ago. The two younger women, Mary and Sarah, sweet Jesus, one was even named Sarah, they held Clara's hands and whispered encouragements, creating a circle of female knowledge that James was privileged to witness but could never fully enter. The dog lay with its head on Clara's thigh, and somehow its presence steadied her. Every time a contraction hit, Clara would grip Sarah's hand with one of hers and bury the other in the dog's rough fur, and the animal never flinched, never moved, just breathed steady and calm like it was praying. "I see the head," Esther said. "2 more pushes, maybe 3. Clara, girl, you're doing fine. Better than fine." Clara pushed, screaming, and James felt her whole body go rigid with effort. He smelled blood and birth waters and the particular sweetness that comes when life forces its way into the world. The canyon walls caught the sound and threw it back, turning one woman's pain into an anthem. One more push, then another. Then a different cry, smaller, outraged, utterly new. "It's a girl," Esther said, and her voice cracked on the words. "A healthy, perfect girl." She placed the baby on Clara's chest, still slick with birth, still trailing cord, and Clara wrapped her arms around the tiny creature and sobbed not from pain now, but from the overwhelming relief of having brought something good into a world determined to be cruel. The dog stood, limped close, and sniffed the baby carefully. Then it licked Clara's face once, gentle, and lay back down. Some marks can't be erased, but they can be transformed into something worth remembering. Dawn came cold and clean, painting the canyon walls gold. Clara sat propped against the stone, her daughter nursing at her breast, wrapped in someone's donated shawl. The baby was dark-haired and red-faced and alive, and that was miracle enough for one night. James had retrieved the rope from Clara's discarded bonds while the women tended to mother and child. Now he held it coiled in his hands, studying the blood-dried brown along its length. Clara's blood, drawn by men who called themselves righteous. "We should burn it," he said. Esther looked up from where she was packing her medicine kit. "The rope? All of it. The rope, the scaffold, every piece of wood they cut to hang her with." His voice was quiet but iron hard. "Burn it and bury the ashes. Let the earth take back what hate built." Clara shifted the baby to her shoulder, patting the tiny back. "They'll just build another. Maybe. But not today. And maybe seeing this one burn will make them think twice before building the next." James met her eyes. "Symbols matter," Sarah taught me that. They rode back to Salvation Bend as the sun cleared the horizon, a strange procession of the nearly murdered, the defender, the midwife, and the dog that limped but never stopped. Word had spread in the way of small towns, where news travels faster than truth, and by the time they reached the square, people had gathered. Not the angry mob from yesterday, but something quieter. Ashamed faces, eyes that couldn't hold contact. Women stood with their children, holding them close, perhaps thinking about what nearly happened, what they nearly allowed. James dismounted in front of the scaffold. The hanging rope still dangled from the crossbeam, swaying slightly in the morning breeze. He looked at Cutler, who stood on the saloon steps, badge catching sunlight. "You going to stop me, Sheriff?" Cutler said nothing. His silence was answer enough. James climbed the scaffold with the bloody rope in one hand and a match tin in the other. He wrapped Clara's rope around the hanging rope, binding them together, past and intended future, blood and intention, all twisted into one symbol of what fear could make men do. He struck the match. The rope caught slow at first, then faster, flame crawling up toward the crossbeam. Black smoke rose, carrying the smell of burning hemp and dried blood into the clean morning air. James stepped back, watching it burn, and no one tried to stop him. The whole scaffold caught dry wood eager for flame, as if it too wanted to be unmade. Within minutes, it was a bonfire, and the crowd watched in silence as justice meant for murder became ash and memory. Clara stood at the edge of the square, the baby quiet against her chest, the dog sitting beside her. A small girl couldn't have been more than 5 broke from her mother's grip and walked toward them. The mother reached out, fearful, but the girl was already there, standing before Clara with something clutched in her small fist. "I picked these for the baby," the girl said, opening her hand to reveal 3 wildflowers, crushed but still bright. "My mama said," she said, sorry. She said she was scared and sorry. Clara's eyes filled. She took the flowers with her free hand, the one that still bore rope burns, red and raw and visible. "Thank you, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Lily May." "Well, Lily May, these are the prettiest flowers I ever saw." Clara bent down carefully, mindful of the baby. "You tell your mama fear makes people do terrible things sometimes. But kindness after that's what counts." The girl ran back to her mother, who was crying now, and other women came forward, tentative, bringing food and cloth and quiet apologies. Not all of them, some faces stayed hard, some turned away, but enough. Enough to start something different. Esther stood beside James, watching the scaffold burn down to ash and nails. "What now?" she asked. "Clara comes north with me, works the ranch till she's strong enough to decide what she wants." He paused. "Dog comes too, I reckon. That dog saved her, you know. Without that howling, you never would have stopped." "I know." By afternoon, the scaffold was gone, just a black scar on the earth where it had stood. Clara knelt beside the ash, took a handful of the char, and pressed it against the rope burns on her wrists. The ash stuck to the blood and fluid, turning the wounds black. "What are you doing?" James asked. "Marking myself. So I remember. So she remembers." Clara looked at her daughter. "These scars, I'm going to tell her they're from the day she was born. The day people wanted to kill us, and the day some of them chose different." She stood, ash-blackened hands cradling the baby. "That's a story worth the scars." Before they left town, Clara did one more thing. She took the 3 crushed wildflowers from Lily May and planted them beside the black scar where the scaffold had burned, pressing them into the earth with her marked hands. She added seeds from her pocket, vegetables she'd carried from her old life, meaning to plant a garden wherever she landed. "Will they grow?" James asked. "Maybe, maybe not. But I planted them anyway." They rode north that evening, James, Clara, the baby who'd been named Sarah, and the 3-legged dog who'd refused to leave. Behind them, Salvation Bend grew smaller, and ahead the mountains rose purple with distance and possibility. Years later, travelers passing through Salvation Bend would see a strange garden growing in the town square, wild and unkempt but persistent. Flowers and vegetables tangled together where a scaffold had once stood, and no one could quite explain how it started or why no one had torn it out. But the old folks knew, and sometimes when the wind was right, you could hear Esther Boone telling the story to children gathered at her feet, about the woman they nearly hanged, about the dog that wouldn't stop howling, about the moment a town chose mercy over certainty. And if you looked close at the story as she told it, you'd see her trace her own wrist while she spoke, as if she too bore scars she'd chosen to remember rather than hide. Some marks are earned by surviving. Some gardens grow from ash. And sometimes the truest justice is simply this: a woman alive, a baby breathing, and a scar that says, "I was here, and I endured." The question that remains, listener, is this: what scaffolds are we building in our own squares, and will we have the courage to burn them before the rope is hung?